This gal came in today and she wants me to do a full head of foils on her, but she already has so much breakage in her hair. Her hair is all different lengths all over the place. There's no real layering, there's no real shape, there's a giant hole in the back, and these pieces in the crown are really going to be a challenge to work around. So she wants a full head of foils, she wants some dimension in her hair, she hates seeing her natural color, and she wants me to basically do an overhaul on her head. There is orange, there is blonde, and there is her natural level 7 brown blonde. So this is going to be quite the process that I'm working with today. But I'm going to show you what I did and what we ended up with. And yeah, so stick around if you want to see what I did today and if you want to see how this, I guess, corrective color worked out. So let's dive in right away. We have sectioned her off into 5 different sections. This is pretty standard for me whenever I do a full head of foils. I like to do a mohawk, the 2 sides, and I like to split the back into 2. What we're doing with these little baby hairs here at the neck is we're just going to tint them down. There is no reason for them to be foiled blonde. They are so brittle and broken, and there's just no point for them to be blonde. So we're gonna low light them. I'm going to go into my formulas in just a moment here, but I do want you guys to kind of see what it is that I'm doing with my entire section here in the back. What I've done for my filming process today is I have filmed one side of each of these mirrored sides. So I didn't film the entire back and I didn't film the entire sides. I just filmed enough for you to kind of get the point for either section that I've done. And then that way you can know that it's just been done the exact same way, but on the other side of the head. So what I'm doing here with my foiling pattern is I'm going dark, light, and it might seem like I'm probably putting a ton of dark in here, but let's talk about my formulation for the low light here, or what I like to call almost maybe a shadow light. I don't know, I've got to come up with some kind of word for this because it's adding a bit of a shadow root in a low light form because I'm not actually bringing down the color all the way down to the ends of the strands. I'm just bringing it down a couple of inches. But let's get into that formula. Today I've used Schwarzkopf Vibrance, and I've done an equal parts ratio of 1 to 1 to 1 of the 846, 80, and 819, and I've put that all together with an equal parts with the 6-volume gel developer. The gel developer I find is quite important to use rather than the lotion developer, especially on level 7 or higher hair. I find that level 7 can be really finicky, and sometimes it can bump up a little bit of a level if you use even a deposit only developer. It can still kind of bump up and release a bit of that natural gold or orange undertone in the hair. And I find that sometimes the lotion does that. So with the gel developer, I find it's a safer bet. So I prefer to use that. So what I actually like to do when I am mixing my 6-volume gel developer is, to be on the safe side, I will mix a slight bit more of the color and a little bit less of the developer, with hopes that it has just a little bit more deposit. Now, I don't know if that's like pseudoscience or some crazy, hair myth, whatever, but I feel like maybe the placebo effect of that works. Anyways, if you don't want it to bump, then make sure to use just a tiny bit less developer. So let's discuss what I'm doing with this formula and why I came up with this one. What I'm doing with it is I am feathering down a couple of inches into this kind of orangey, yellowy area. Now, what happened with her hair history is that she does a root color with like a 30 volume, it's like a high lift, and then she'll do foils on top of that from time to time. This just over time gives her a lot of like sensitive, damaged hair. She went to a new girl to get a whole head of foils, and I think the girl just wasn't able to tell the difference between previous highlights and the root color, ended up over processing her hair all over the place. So we're not doing that blonde color on the root anymore. We're doing our highlights and our lowlights. And because this root smudge is here to kind of blend those 2 colors in, I wanted to use a color that wasn't as dark as her natural, which is a level 7. And I didn't want to bring it all the way down because she still wants to be super blonde, and we want to blend in her extensions that are going to be going in later. And the extensions blend in perfectly to the ends of her hair already, so we don't want to mess around with that. Also with low lights, the more you put in, the more obvious they are, and they tend to fade out really orangey anyways. So this is just going to be something that's a barely there shadow root. It's at a level 8, so it's just one level darker than her highlight and one level lighter than her natural. It's a good medium place to kind of have this. It's low risk. And the colors that I chose were 846, 80, and 819. So if you've seen some of my other videos before, you probably have seen me use similar formulas, but that has an equal parts of a balancing color, which is the 846. It's a beige chocolate, and I find that that's a good balance and fill. And it has 80, which is just strictly there for fill. The O is a natural color, so it's like a brown with a slight bit of orange into the formula. And I find that that is really helpful just for holding the color in place. Then the 819 is an ashy violet color, and that's going to fight orange pigments, even though there's orange pigments already in our formula. Again, this is all for balance and fill to make it a natural and soft looking shadow. And we're not, again, trying to get like super dark with the low lights. We're just trying to soften up that root area, because as you guys can see, this is a really hard looking root because she does the full root color and highlights. She's let it grow for a while, and we're just trying to soften up the transition between these two areas, because what we want to do down the road is just do like a half head of foils every 6 months and then a full head once per year. So she's coming in probably twice per year to get her highlights done. We're gonna transition her to a balayage so that she has a lower maintenance look. She can blend in any grays with any foiling work, but get healthier hair and be lower maintenance overall. Let's talk about our bleach formula. The lightener formula today is really important, and it's important for a few reasons. I've used Wella Blonderplex and 10 volume for her formula, and I have not mixed any Schwarzkopf into that for a few reasons. Wella Blonderplex I find, because it's kind of a clay lightener, it's kind of this sticky, it's very sticky, and I do like using it for shorter roots like this when you're trying to not overlap too much of the hair and you're trying to stick the hair onto the foil. You're working with a little bit of precariousness. She's also a level 7, so it's not like we need to lift her 7 levels or anything. We just need to lift her a good 3 to 4 levels. And, well, I mean, not technically 3 to 4. Technically, it's like 2 levels, but overall, a level 7 looks quite a bit darker than a level 9. We're just trying to lift her to a blonde, and she's already like a light brown, dirty blonde, so we don't need a ton of power. So using Wella Blonderplex and 10 volume, it's going to be a low and slow and sticky formula, which is the best way to go when you have short roots like this. You guys can probably see that I am overlapping in a lot of these blonde areas, but it might be kind of hard to tell with how the camera has picked up the color today, but there are highlights and orange splotches kind of everywhere. So wherever I am highlighting, I'm trying to get onto those kind of orangier areas and brighten them up in a really gentle way with the 10 volume. Again, this is just lifting from those kind of level 8 areas. So it's only one level of difference between her natural and those exposed orange areas. So overall, I think that this is a pretty gentle lift. And again, that stickiness really helps to hold these embossed foils. And that's why I do like using embossed foils for something like this too. As you guys can see, there's a texture on the foil. It's not like a really slippy, thin foil. That will help it to grip onto the hair that's being highlighted much easier. The way I'm finishing off each of these sections too is with a bigger low light, because that's going to create a little bit of that teardrop shape around the apex of her head, which is going to give her a softer look around that big kind of whorl opening area where everybody has that cowlick. So now we're going to be working on the sides here, and we have teeny tiny little broken baby hairs. And again, this is why it's so important to use a sticky lightener formula so that you can really stick those foils on, not get any foil bleeds, because we're working with such a short regrowth and short little broken hairs, and we don't want to cause more breakage. And luckily we had no breakage today. It was such a blessing. It wasn't super high risk of breaking further with the way that I applied and with my formula, but you never know when you're doing someone's hair, honestly, for like the first time in forever. Last time I did her hair was probably 8 or 9 years ago when we worked at the same salon, but now she's coming back to me after a big hair issue she's had somewhere else, where someone I think they were just probably overwhelmed with the hair that she had. Not that it was bad, it was just too hard to tell probably the difference between the two colors. And because she used a 30 volume root color regularly to lift her natural level 7 to like a level 8, 8.5, I think that over time just does quite a bit of drying and maybe some damage, that when you put highlights over it, there's only so many times you can do that before the hair just decides no more. So what I've done on these side pieces is, instead of going dark light like I've done with everything else in the back, I have done 3 light ones in a row to give a little bit of that money piece, and then I've done a dark one right behind it. And what I'm also doing with these darker ones here in the front is to make them a little bit softer and a little bit less intense than the ones in the back. I am not taking a slice and just painting down. I am still using weaves, as you can see right here, so that there's less intense darkening of these little low lights. Also because the hairs are so insanely broken on this side. Like, look at those short little bits. That's just all breakage. She had more breakage on this side than she did on the other from her last appointment, so maybe her last stylist put this side in first. Something to pay attention to too when you're working with someone who's had lots of breakage in their hair is look where the pieces are the shortest, and you'll see what the last stylist really did. Again, sorry about my filming today too. I couldn't really tell what was going on with my camera, but it was going in and out of focus. So I really hope that that wasn't too exhausting or frustrating for you guys to look at and pay attention to. So I do like to soften everything up on these sides by going on a diagonal and following the hairline. I find that ends up giving her a softer, more natural look. You can't really tell the foil lines or anything like that as much. So if you're learning to do foils, or you're kind of newer to hair, or you're looking for a new way to put in foils instead of doing them horizontally or totally vertically, do them on a diagonal and follow the natural hairline of like the way that everyone's hair grows. It's going to be a little bit different around the face. Follow the line that the face creates. As for the pattern, I did the same as I did with the back, dark light, after I did those 3 initial light pieces in a row around the face. And that's going to give us a bit of our transition into the balayage effect that we're looking for. Another thing that's helping to transition that look in a soft way is because, yes, I am doing the weaves in the front and slices in the back for the low light. That's going to give the back a little bit more depth and darkness. It's going to allow us to continue on with our maintenance appointments, just being a half head for our next appointment and then a full head in a year from now. And overall, that's going to give us that soft depth in the back and some natural contrast that we're looking for with a balayage. Now we're on to the Mohawk, and I like to start my Mohawk from the back. With the apex of the head here, I'm going to be really stingy with how many foils I put in that are highlights, because I want to keep the depth and the darkness in this kind of back area where the parting opens up to the cowlick. The reason for that being is because I want to have some softness with the grow out, and I don't want to see a really harsh root like we have currently. So I am taking larger sections for my low light or my shadow light, and then in contrast I am doing a finer weave for my highlight to sit next to that low light area, so that the low light stands out a little bit more than the highlight here. And anything that gets weaved out, yes, is going to still have this kind of harsher root, but that is just the reality of when you do foiling and you're trying to transition from a solid look to a dimensional look. There's still going to be that line if you leave that line there. However, you guys can see how little of the hair I'm actually leaving out, and so it won't be much of an issue at all with this. It's still going to allow us to have a bit of dimension and still keep quite a good amount of blonde in her hair. And as you can see, as I'm getting a little bit closer towards the middle of the top of her head, I am taking larger weaves. I wouldn't say sections, like they're still pretty large sections with my lowlights. As you can see here, they're pretty thick, because again, I want to drop down a veil of a little bit more darkness, I guess. And this is where you want to do that, is on the very top. And I know a lot of people probably say that's where you want the most blonde, but this is what's veiling over the top of it and over the rest. And this is kind of the rooted area. So I personally would rather have a little bit more dark here with blonde in the ends than to have a higher maintenance blonde right up to the root, right along the parting if I'm going for a look like this. Overall, towards the front, we slowly get more and more aggressive with the blonding and a little less aggressive with the dark so that we have a really soft gradient from back to front, which you will see in the next clip here. But I didn't film the very front pieces, but that's just a few, honestly, highlights that are kind of stacked together right in a row, just for that money piece, similar to what I did along the sides. And that's going to give her a little bit more of that blonde that she's comfortable with right around the face. Because again, she hasn't had her natural hair since she was 14, she was telling me. So it's been a long time. And she doesn't like seeing this darkness, but she still showed me pictures with a lot of this darkness in there naturally. So it's a bit of a transitionary thing for her. She's going to have to get used to it. But another thing that helps her get used to it is having a blonder money piece right around the face that makes her feel like she is blonde, and she still feels good about it and everything. But it's a good way to kind of transition someone into being solidly light to having a dimensional light color with some of their natural in there. So this is what her hair looks like as a raw lift, no toner. We will be doing a toner, but I wanted you guys to see for educational purposes what it looks like to have these foils in here. I know we're getting a little bit of like a red cast here. It does not look that red in real life. My camera sometimes adds a bit of red where there's just a little bit of warmth naturally, but makes it look a little redder than it really is. But as you guys can see that I stacked my foils a little bit close together around the front, and there still is a little bit of yellowness in there. And even though she was loving the look of this initially, I was like, girl, we got to tone. We still got to soften this down. So I did apply the toner to like the first like 4 inches of her hair and not down to like the bottom half, because again, her extensions that she brought with her match perfectly to these ends, and I didn't want to touch that with any toner just in case they were super porous and might not want to drop that color out. But I do want to find a color that works here to blend everything in, soften up that root area and soften up those foils, because as you can see, you can really see these foils, but again, toner will soften that all up. I have no worries about that. But I think this is great for people who are learning hair to see what the placement looks like with a raw lift. And yes, there is a little bit more of that yellowness up in the front. I did choose to rinse her out a smidgen early, but that's because she had so much breakage around the front, I didn't want to add to it. I'm going to show you what that breakage actually looks like right now, because I remember holding a piece and being like, wow, this is so short and so broken. This is the kind of breakage she had all over. There wasn't really any like actual layers to her hair. It was just all breakage all over the place. So that can be difficult to place lowlights and highlights within that, because you never know if the lowlights are going to stand out too much or the highlights too much. Some hairs might not stick to the foil too well because they're too short. But overall, yeah, she had some pretty crazy damage coming in. But luckily today she had no damage in my chair. So that's great, because we were very, very careful with her formulations and her placement and application. So overall, we're on the road to healthier hair for this client. And so let's get into what I did for my formula. Here she is after she's been toned. As you can tell, it's a much softer look. This toner pulled everything together, and I applied it just for the first like 4 inches of the hair. It even softened up a little bit of that kind of orangey reddy tone that we were seeing. And it is a equal parts mix of Schwarzkopf Vibrance 9-1 and 9-4. And I wanted to use a decent amount of ash here because she had so much yellow in her hair naturally. But look at the difference there is between the raw lift and this. Just toning it honestly softens it up so much. She looked so beautiful with it, and because she has the most icy blue eyes, this just ended up being such a gorgeous look on her, and it blended in seamlessly to the color that we had in through her ends. So there doesn't really seem to be much, if any at all, line of demarcation, which I'm really happy about as well. We wanted to keep her light, ash it out a little bit without going too overboard and making her actually look kind of dull. Just kind of honestly beiging it out is probably the appropriate word to use here. But this is what her hair looks like before we put in her weft extensions, and we're about to put in the weft so you can see the final result. We just put in one track today, which helps with a little bit of fullness to help disguise any of the breakage that she had. And again, here is our before, what we started with, because I know it's been a little bit of a longer video. Kind of wanted to give you guys the reminder of what her hair looked like beforehand. She didn't want to do a cut today, so obviously I'm going to respect that, respect her wishes. It is her hair, so it is her choice if she wants to do cuts or not. I think next time she'll allow me to do a bit of a chop and some relayering, but I think she wants her hair to grow a little bit before we commit to doing something like that. But again, here is her before. Kind of yellowy, kind of broken all over the place, and not really blending with her natural, versus her after, which has her weft extensions in there just to add some fullness. But overall, she is going to be able to grow her hair for several months before getting irritated with the roots. I'm really happy with this transformation, and so is she. I feel like the blend is pretty seamless and very soft around the crown and the front, honestly everywhere. And I think this was a really great transformation here. What did you guys think? Did you learn anything from this video? If you did, please write that down in the comments. I would love to know if there's something new that you learned, especially if you're a regular viewer. And let me know in the comments too if there's anything you'd like to see from me future-wise for, color services or even cuts as well. And, as always, thank you so much for joining me today. I appreciate and love all of you. And remember to like and subscribe to show the channel some support if you'd like to do so. And if not, then that's totally fine. Anyways, enjoy your day, everybody, and I will see you at the next one.